The meeting room on Station Prime was quiet except for the soft hum of air recyclers. Commander Drex sat at the metal table, his forearms folded as he studied the holographic display floating before him. The blue-skinned alien had led the Crimson Talon Syndicate for over 20 years. His reputation in the mercenary business was solid. Clean jobs, fair payments, no unnecessary killing. Across from him sat Agent Voss, a representative of the Villani Corporate Consortium. The tall, thin alien wore the standard gray uniform of corporate officials. His large black eyes never seemed to blink as he spoke. "The target is simple," Voss said, his voice carrying the typical emotionless tone of his species. "A human research outpost on Kepler 442b, 12 researchers. Basic security systems, nothing more." Drex leaned forward. "Humans?" He had fought humans before during border skirmishes. They were average fighters at best, not particularly strong or fast compared to most galactic species. "What kind of research?" "Illegal terraforming experiments," Voss replied quickly. "They are damaging the ecosystem. Our mining operations in the next system are being affected. The Galactic Council has been slow to respond to our complaints." The hologram shifted to show a small cluster of buildings surrounded by dense jungle. Scan data indicated minimal energy signatures. A few basic defense turrets, some kind of communication array. Nothing that would challenge a professional mercenary company. "Payment?" Drex asked. 5 million credits. Standard rate plus 50% bonus for quick completion. Drex raised an eyebrow ridge. The bonus was unusually high for such a simple job. But the Villani were known for paying well. They had more money than sense, most mercenaries agreed. Timeline? 1 week from contract signing. The research team has been there for 6 months. Our intelligence suggests they have no military support. Drex studied the data again. 12 researchers. Maybe a couple of security guards. Basic weapons. It would be over in hours once his team landed. "I will need 40 soldiers," Drex said. 3 assault shuttles, standard equipment. Agreed. "But, Commander Drex," Voss leaned forward slightly, "there can be no survivors. The research data must be destroyed completely. No witnesses." Something in the alien's tone made Drex pause. In 20 years of mercenary work, he had learned to read between the lines. The Villani seemed nervous about something. But 5 million credits was 5 million credits. Understood. The Crimson Talon Syndicate accepts the contract. 3 days later, Drex stood in the cargo bay of his flagship as his soldiers prepared their equipment. The Crimson Talon Syndicate was made up of veterans from a dozen different species. There was Keth, a massive reptilian warrior from the Outer Rim. His thick scales could stop most small arms fire. Next to him, the insect-like soldier Zix checked, his plasma rifle with precise movements of his 6 arms. The squad leaders gathered around Drex for final briefing. Lieutenant Mora, a cat-like female from the feline worlds, had been with him for 8 years. She was fast and deadly in close combat. Sergeant Beck, a heavily armored turtle-like being, specialized in heavy weapons and demolitions. "Intelligence reports are clear," Drex said, activating the tactical display. 12 human researchers, basic security. We go in fast and clean. 3 teams. Mora takes the eastern approach. Beck hits the main facility from the south. I lead the northern assault. "What about civilian casualties?" asked Mora. Her species had strict honor codes about fighting non-combatants. "Client wants no survivors," Drex replied. "Orders are orders." Mora's ears flattened against her head, but she nodded. Credits were credits. The journey to Kepler 442b took 2 days at maximum jump speed. During the trip, Drex reviewed everything. He knew about humans. They came from a heavy gravity world called Earth. This made them stronger than average, but not by much. Their technology was decent, but not exceptional. They had been part of galactic civilization for only 50 years. What bothered him was their military record. Humans had fought in several conflicts since joining the galaxy. Most reports described them as stubborn and hard to predict. But stubborn did not win battles against superior numbers and firepower. On the second day, Lieutenant Mora approached him on the bridge. "Commander, I have been thinking about this job," she said quietly. "Problems?" Drex asked. "The bonus payment. It is very high for such a simple target." And the client seemed worried about something. Drex had been thinking the same thing. But the contract was signed. The Crimson Talon Syndicate had a reputation to maintain. "Perhaps the humans have friends in high places," he said. "Political complications. The Vallani want the job done quickly and quietly." Mora nodded, but her expression remained troubled. When they arrived at Kepler 442b, the planet looked exactly as advertised. Dense jungle covered most of the landmass. The research outpost was a small cluster of prefabricated buildings in a cleared area near a river. Scans confirmed 12 life signs. Energy readings were minimal. "Easy money," muttered Sergeant Beck as he studied the tactical display. But something felt wrong to Drex. The outpost was too quiet. Too normal. In his experience, when a job seemed too easy, it usually was. "All teams, prepare for immediate deployment," he ordered. "We hit them at dawn, quick and clean." The 3 assault shuttles launched from the main ship under cover of darkness. They would approach from different directions, surround the outpost, and attack simultaneously. Standard tactics for this type of operation. As they descended through the atmosphere, Drex reviewed the mission parameters one more time. Kill 12 researchers. Destroy their data. Leave no trace. Simple. He had no way of knowing that 3 days earlier, Earth's Colonial Defense Force had intercepted communications suggesting an attack on human civilians. A 6-person special operations team was already on the ground. Hidden in the jungle around the research station, Captain Reed lay perfectly still in the underbrush, watching the mercenary shuttles through night vision scopes. His team had been preparing for 3 days. They knew exactly what was coming. The mercenaries had superior numbers and firepower. But they were about to learn why humanity had earned its place in the galaxy through more than just diplomacy and trade agreements. They were about to face Deathworld Special Forces. The shuttles touched down in the pre-dawn darkness, their engines kicking up clouds of jungle debris. 40 alien mercenaries emerged, checking weapons and forming up into assault teams. Commander Drex felt confident. This would be over soon. The jungle air was thick and humid as Commander Drex's forces moved through the dense vegetation. Dawn was breaking over Kepler 442b, casting strange shadows through the alien trees. The mercenaries advanced in 3 groups, just as planned. Everything seemed normal. Drex led the northern assault team through what looked like a natural path between massive tree trunks. His soldiers moved quietly, their equipment making only soft clicks and whispers. These were professionals who had done this type of operation dozens of times. "Thermal scans show the 12 targets still inside the main building," reported Keth through the CUM system. His reptilian eyes could see heat signatures better than most species. "No movement detected." "Copy that," Drex replied. "Teams 2 and 3, report status." "Team 2 in position," came Lieutenant Mora's voice from the eastern approach. "Ready to advance on your signal." "Team 3 moving into final position," Sergeant Beck confirmed from the south. "Heavy weapons locked and loaded." Drex checked his chronometer. Everything was running on schedule. The research outpost lay just ahead through the trees. A few more minutes and this job would be finished. That was when the first explosion ripped through the jungle. The blast came from Team 3's position. Drex heard Sergeant Beck's shocked voice over the CUM. "Contact! Contact! We have casualties. Something triggered our mines." But that was impossible. The mercenaries had set those mines themselves just minutes ago. The researchers were still inside their buildings according to all scans. Team 3 report. Drex ordered, but only Static answered. Lieutenant Mora's voice crackled through the cum. Commander, I'm seeing movement in the trees. Fast movement. This doesn't match human profiles. Drex felt the first cold touch of worry. In 20 years of mercenary work, ambushes were always a possibility, but their intelligence had been clear. 12 researchers, basic security, no military support. All teams proceed with caution, he ordered. Advance toward the target building. Watch for defensive positions. The northern team moved forward another 100 meters. The research outpost came into view through the trees. It looked exactly like the intelligence photos. Prefabricated buildings. Some kind of equipment scattered around. Everything quiet and normal. Too quiet. The second explosion came without warning. This time it was behind them. Drex spun around to see smoke rising from their retreat path. Someone had blown the trail they had just used. We're cut off, reported his squad leader, a veteran warrior named Hax. Exit route is blocked. Now Drex knew they were in trouble. This was not random. Someone had planned this. Someone had been waiting for them. Team 2, status report. He called into his cum. Mora's response was tense. Under fire. Sniper fire. From unknown positions. We can't see the shooter. The distinctive crack of a long-range rifle echoed through the jungle. Then another, and another. Each shot seemed to come from a different direction. How many shooters? Drex demanded. Unknown. The shots are coming from everywhere. That was impossible. 12 researchers could not mount this kind of defense. Unless Team 3 respond. Drex tried again to reach Sergeant Beck's unit. This time Beck's voice came through, shaky and uncertain. We've lost 4 soldiers. Something is wrong here, Commander. These aren't researchers. Drex's mind raced. The intelligence had been wrong, or incomplete, or deliberately false. What are you seeing? He asked. Professional tactics, Beck replied. Coordinated ambush, advanced explosives. This is military. The word hit Drex like a physical blow. Military. Human military. He had heard stories about human soldiers. Wild tales told in mercenary bars after too many drinks. Stories about humans who could fight for days without rest. Who could carry equipment loads that would break other species. Who came from a world so dangerous that simply surviving there made them deadly. But those were just stories, weren't they? A third explosion echoed through the jungle, this one much closer. Drex's team hit the ground as debris rained down through the trees. Contact front, shouted Hax. Incoming fire. Plasma bolts began flying through the jungle. But the mercenaries could not see their targets. The enemy was using the dense vegetation perfectly, appearing just long enough to fire, then vanishing again. Return fire, Drex ordered. Suppress and advance. His soldiers opened up with everything they had. Plasma rifles, rocket launchers, heavy blasters. The jungle exploded with light and sound. Trees burst into flame. The air filled with smoke and the smell of burning vegetation. But when the barrage ended, the incoming fire resumed immediately, as if nothing had happened. Commander. Keth's voice was filled with something Drex had never heard from the tough reptilian warrior. Fear. I can see one of them. Moving through the fire. How is that possible? What do you mean? Drex demanded. The human. He's advancing through our killing zone. Just walking through it like the plasma bolts aren't even there. That had to be an exaggeration. No species could simply ignore weapons fire. But when Drex looked through his scope toward the research outpost, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A figure in camouflaged armor was indeed moving through the battlefield, not running for cover, not dodging frantically, just moving, with calm, professional purpose from one position to another. As Drex watched, a plasma bolt struck the figure directly in the chest. The human stumbled slightly, then kept moving. That's not possible. Drex whispered. His cum crackled with panicked voices from all three teams. Casualties mounting. Equipment destroyed. Retreat routes cut off. And somewhere in the chaos, a calm human voice speaking in their own language. Target identified. Multiple hostiles in 3 groups. Beginning suppression. The voice was completely calm, professional, like this was just another day at work. Lieutenant Mora's team tried to flank around to the eastern side of the outpost. But as they moved through what looked like empty jungle, the forest itself seemed to come alive. Explosions erupted from the ground. Trees fell across their path. And always that steady rifle fire from positions they could never identify. "They're using the terrain against us," Mora reported, her voice tight with strain. "Every time we move, they're ready for us. Like they can see the future." Drex realized with growing horror that his 40-soldier professional mercenary company was being systematically destroyed by an enemy they could barely see. An enemy that seemed to know exactly what they would do before they did it. "All teams fall back to the landing zone," he ordered. "We need to regroup and reassess." But when his soldiers tried to retreat, they found their path blocked by more explosions, more carefully placed obstacles. The humans had not just been waiting for them. They had been preparing as the sun climbed. Higher over the jungle battlefield, Commander Drex began to understand that his mercenaries were not the hunters in this fight. They were the prey. Darkness fell over the jungle like a heavy blanket. Commander Drex had never been afraid of the dark before. His species had excellent night vision, and most of his soldiers came from worlds where hunting in darkness was normal. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the darkness belonged to the humans. The mercenary forces had managed to regroup near their landing shuttles, but the cost had been terrible. 12 soldiers dead. 8 more wounded badly enough to be combat ineffective. And they still had not completed their mission. "Status report," Drex ordered quietly. His remaining team leaders gathered around him in a defensive circle. Lieutenant Mora looked exhausted. Her usually perfect fur was matted with sweat and dirt. "Team 2 has 7 soldiers left. We lost contact with the advance scouts an hour ago. They just disappeared." Sergeant Beck was even worse off. The heavily armored warrior had a large crack running down his shell. "Team 3 is down to 9 effective soldiers. Whatever hit us earlier, it wasn't random. They knew exactly where we would be." Drex studied the tactical display on his portable unit. The research outpost glowed softly in the distance, maybe 2 kilometers away. According to their sensors, the 12 human researchers were still inside the main building. But now Drex knew there were others out there. Professional soldiers who had turned this simple job into a nightmare. "How many do you think we're facing?" he asked. "Hard to say," Beck replied. "The attacks are coordinated, but they could be coming from as few as 4 or 5 positions. Maybe a full squad." Drex did the math in his head. Even if there were 12 human soldiers, his forces should still have the advantage. 40 against 12 should be an easy victory. But nothing about this fight had been easy. "They're using the jungle against us," Mora said quietly. "Every tree, every rock, every shadow. It's like they grew up here." But that was impossible. The humans had only been on this planet for 6 months, according to the intelligence reports. A soft sound in the darkness made every mercenary freeze. It was barely audible, like a branch brushing against fabric. But in the sudden silence, it seemed as loud as a gunshot. "Contact," whispered Keth, raising his massive rifle. "Something moving at 2 o'clock. 20 weapons turned toward the sound. Night vision scopes activated, targeting systems engaged. But there was nothing there. Just empty jungle." Then the first soldier simply vanished. Private Yex, a young warrior from the ice worlds, had been standing guard at the perimeter. One moment he was there, scanning the tree line with his thermal scope. The next moment he was gone. No sound, no struggle, just gone. Yex report. Drex called softly into his cum. Silence. Fan out, Drex ordered. Find him. 6 soldiers moved carefully toward Yex's last position. They found his rifle lying on the ground. His equipment pack was still there, but Yex himself had disappeared completely. Blood trail, reported one of the searchers. Leads into the jungle. Follow it, Drex ordered, but the trail only went 20 meters before ending at a stream. The water was dark and fast-moving. There was no sign of where Yex had gone. This is impossible, muttered Beck. He weighs 200 kilos. You can't just carry off a soldier that size without making noise. But apparently humans could. Over the next 2 hours, 3 more mercenaries disappeared. Each time, the pattern was the same. A soldier on guard duty would simply vanish without a sound. Sometimes they found equipment, sometimes blood. But never the soldiers themselves. Fear began to spread through the mercenary ranks like a disease. These were hardened veterans who had fought in a dozen wars. But they had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that could move through the darkness like ghosts and pick off experienced soldiers without making a sound. They're playing with us, Mora said during another brief meeting. Her voice carried a tremor that Drex had never heard before. This isn't about completing a mission anymore. They're hunting us for sport. Drex wanted to disagree, but the evidence was hard to ignore. A professional military force would have attacked directly. These humans were using psychological warfare, breaking down his soldiers' morale one disappearance at a time. We stick together, he decided. No more guard posts. No more patrols. Everyone stays in the main group. It was a sound tactical decision, but it also meant they were trapped, unable to advance toward their target, unable to retreat to their ships. Just sitting in the jungle while an invisible enemy picked them apart. The next attack came at midnight. This time, they saw the human, just for a moment. A figure in dark armor moving between the trees like liquid shadow. Sergeant Beck opened fire immediately, his heavy plasma cannon lighting up the jungle. Target down, he shouted triumphantly. But when they reached the position where the human had fallen, there was nothing there. Just scorch marks on the trees and the lingering smell of burned vegetation. Impossible, Beck muttered. I hit him directly. Nothing survives a plasma cannon blast. 30 seconds later, Beck screamed. The human had appeared behind him like a ghost. There was a brief struggle, visible only as shadows moving in the darkness. Then Beck's massive form went limp, and both figures disappeared into the jungle. Open! Fire! Open fire! Drex shouted. His remaining soldiers poured weapons fire into the area where Beck had vanished. Trees exploded. The ground erupted in clouds of dirt and smoke. They fired until their weapons overheated and their ammunition ran low. When the barrage finally stopped, the jungle was silent again. Beck, respond, Drex called into his cum. No answer. Keth, the massive reptilian warrior, was visibly shaking. Commander, what are these things? They move like shadows. They ignore our weapons. They drag off soldiers twice their size. Drex had no answer. In his files on human military capabilities, there was nothing about this kind of performance. Humans were supposed to be average, normal, unremarkable compared to the stronger and faster species of the galaxy. But the evidence of his own eyes told a different story. These humans moved through terrain that would challenge his best scouts. They carried equipment loads that would strain most species' strongest warriors. And they seemed completely unaffected by wounds that should have been fatal. Maybe the stories are true, whispered one of his soldiers. What stories? Drex asked. The ones they tell in the bars on Station Prime. About humans coming from a death world. About how everything on their planet tries to kill them from the moment they're born. About how just surviving there makes them into something that other species can't understand. Drex had heard those stories too. He had always assumed they were exaggerated tales told by drunk spacers. But as he sat in the dark jungle, listening for sounds that might mean another of his soldiers was about to disappear, he began to wonder if the stories were actually too mild. Dawn was still hours away, and Commander Drex was starting to realize that his 40-soldier professional mercenary company might not survive to see it. Dawn brought no relief to Commander Drex and his remaining soldiers. By first light, his mercenary company had been reduced to 23 effective fighters. More than half his force was gone, and they had not even reached their target yet. "This ends now," Drex declared, his voice hard with desperation. "We stop playing by their rules." He activated his long-range communicator and sent an emergency signal to his flagship in orbit. "Command ship, this is ground team. Request immediate orbital support. Heavy bombardment on these coordinates." The response came back quickly. "Commander, orbital bombardment was not part of the mission parameters. The client specifically requested precision strikes only." "The client lied to us," Drex snarled. "There are human military forces down here, professional soldiers. We need serious firepower." After a long pause, the ship's captain replied, "Understood. We are moving into bombardment position now." Drex turned to his remaining soldiers. "We finish this the hard way. Orbital strikes on the research facility. Then we move in and clean up whatever survives." Lieutenant Mora looked uncomfortable. "Commander, what about the researchers? If we bombard the facility... They are already dead," Drex said flatly. "The humans would not have left them alive. Our job now is survival." The first orbital strike hit the research outpost 30 minutes later. A beam of pure energy lanced down from space, turning one of the buildings into a crater of melted metal and glass. Then another strike. And another. Drex watched through his scope as the human facility was systematically destroyed. Smoke rose in thick black columns. Fires burned in the jungle where stray shots had hit. "That should take care of their defensive positions," he said with satisfaction. But even as he spoke, weapons fire erupted from the jungle around them. Not from the direction of the destroyed outpost, but from 3 different positions in the forest behind them. "How?" shouted Keth as he dove for cover. "We just destroyed their base." "They moved," Mora realized with growing horror. "They evacuated before the bombardment started. They knew what we were going to do." More orbital strikes rained down, but now they were hitting empty jungle. The humans had abandoned their prepared positions and melted back into the forest like ghosts. "All units, advance toward the target," Drex ordered. "If they want to fight us in the open, we will oblige them." The remaining mercenaries formed up into a tight formation and began moving through the devastated landscape. The orbital bombardment had cleared large sections of the jungle, creating open ground where their superior firepower could be brought to bear. That was when they discovered what human adaptability really meant. The first improvised, explosive device was hidden in the corpse of a fallen tree. When Keth stepped over the log, it erupted in a shower of metal fragments and chemical fire. The massive reptilian warrior, who had survived dozens of battles, went down screaming as the improvised shrapnel tore through his armor. "Medic," Drex called. But they had already lost their medical specialist in the night raids. The second IED was made from their own equipment. Somehow, the humans had recovered weapons and ammunition from the disappeared mercenaries and turned them into traps. A plasma grenade, rigged as a tripwire, took out 2 more soldiers. "They're using our own gear against us," Mora said in disbelief. "How do they even know how our equipment works?" The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the wounded mercenaries, a tech specialist named Jorik, was monitoring their communication frequencies when he picked up human chatter. "Commander," he called weakly from where he lay propped against a destroyed tree. "I'm intercepting their communications. They're speaking our language. Perfect pronunciation. And they're discussing the technical specifications of our weapons in detail." Drex felt a chill run down his spine. That's impossible. Our equipment is military grade. Classified technology. They've been examining the gear from our captured soldiers, Jorik continued. One of them just gave a complete breakdown of our plasma rifle power settings. Another one is explaining how to modify our grenades for maximum anti-personnel effect. The implications hit Drex like a physical blow. The humans were not just fighting them, they were learning from them, studying their equipment, their tactics, their weaknesses, and adapting in real time. Move faster, he ordered his remaining soldiers. We need to end this before they figure out anything else. But it was already too late. The humans had spent the morning while the mercenaries regrouped, and they had been busy. As Drex's force advanced toward what remained of the research outpost, they walked into a killing field that defied belief. The first surprise was the automated turret that rose from the rubble of a destroyed building. But it was not firing standard energy weapons. Instead, it launched a barrage of improvised projectiles made from salvaged mercenary equipment. Where did they get power for a turret? Demanded Mora as they dove for cover. The answer became clear when they spotted the jury-rigged power lines running from the turret back to what looked like a collection of their own portable generators, somehow wired together into a single power source. They built that in 4 hours, Drex said in amazement, from scraps and salvage. But the turret was just the beginning. As his soldiers tried to flank around the automated weapon, they discovered that the humans had turned the entire battlefield into a workshop. Everywhere they looked, their own equipment had been repurposed into new and deadly configurations. Medical scanners had been turned into motion detectors. Communication devices had become remote detonators. Even simple tools like entrenching shovels had been modified into spring-loaded projectile launchers. This is not possible, Keth groaned from where he lay wounded. No species learns technology this fast. But Drex was beginning to understand something that filled him with a deep and growing dread. The humans were not just learning their technology. They were improving it. A captured plasma rifle that should have had a maximum range of 200 meters was now firing accurately at targets 400 meters away. A simple communications device was somehow jamming their entire tactical network while simultaneously broadcasting human coordination chatter. They're not just adapting, he whispered to Mora. They're innovating. In the middle of a battle, they're making our own weapons better than we ever could. The final proof came when one of his soldiers reported something that should have been impossible. Commander, I'm looking at what used to be their research equipment. They've turned geological survey tools into some kind of artillery system. And it's firing projectiles made from our own ammunition. Drex closed his eyes and tried to process what he was seeing. In less than 12 hours, a small team of human soldiers had taken a devastating defeat and turned it into an opportunity. They had salvaged, adapted, and improved everything they could get their hands on. And now they were using the mercenaries' own superior technology against them in ways its original designers had never imagined. Sir, came a shaky voice over the comm. Request permission to withdraw. We are seriously outgunned. Drex looked around at his 19 remaining soldiers. They were facing an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every setback. An enemy that could turn any piece of equipment into a weapon and any tactical disadvantage into an opportunity. For the first time in his 20-year career, Commander Drex was beginning to think that retreat might be the only option. The end came not with a final battle, but with a simple realization. Commander Drex sat behind a fallen tree, counting his remaining soldiers. 14. Out of 40 professional mercenaries, only 14 were still capable of fighting, and they had not even seen most of their enemies. Commander, Lieutenant Mora crawled up beside him, her fur matted with dirt and blood. The men are asking questions. They want to know when we extract. Drex stared at the smoking ruins of the research outpost in the distance. According to his original briefing, This job should have been finished 12 hours ago. Instead, his elite mercenary company was being systematically destroyed by an enemy they could barely identify. "How many humans do you think we are actually fighting?" he asked quietly. Mora considered the question carefully. "Based on the coordination patterns and attack timing? Maybe 6, 7 at most. 6 humans." 6 soldiers from a species that was supposed to be unremarkable had reduced his force by more than half. The mathematics of it made no sense according to everything he knew about galactic military doctrine. "Sir," came a weak voice from their makeshift medical area. It was Jorik, the tech specialist who had been monitoring human communications. "I've been analyzing their chatter patterns. I think you need to hear this." Drex moved over to where the wounded alien lay propped against his equipment pack. Jorik's hands shook as he adjusted his communication scanner. "Listen to this," Jorik said, playing back a recorded transmission. A calm human voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. "Research. Team secure in bunker complex. All 12 civilians confirmed safe. Estimate hostile force reduced to minimal threat level. Beginning cleanup operations." Drex felt the blood drain from his face. "The researchers are alive?" "All 12, Jorik confirmed. The humans evacuated them to some kind of underground facility before we even landed. This whole battle has been a delaying action." The full scope of what had happened began to dawn on Drex. The humans had not been defending a static position. They had been buying time, protecting civilians while systematically dismantling a superior force. "There's more," Jorik continued. "I've been tracking their movement patterns. The attacks, the traps, the psychological warfare. It's all textbook. Asymmetric warfare doctrine, but executed perfectly." "What do you mean?" Mora asked. "They turned our advantages into weaknesses. Our superior numbers meant we made more noise and bigger targets. Our advanced weapons meant we had more equipment to be captured and turned against us. Our conventional tactics meant we were predictable." Drex understood now why the Villani had paid such a high bonus for this contract. They had known exactly what they were sending his mercenaries against. They had deliberately chosen not to warn him about the true nature of the human defenders. "Sir," another soldier called out. "Movement on the perimeter." Every remaining mercenary raised their weapons, but what emerged from the jungle was not an attack. It was a single human soldier, walking openly across the battlefield with his hands visible and empty. The figure stopped at speaking distance and removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face with calm, intelligent eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried the same professional tone they had been hearing over the communications. "Commander Drex of the Crimson Talon Syndicate," the human said. "I am Captain Reed, Earth Colonial Defense Force. I am here to discuss terms." Drex felt his remaining soldiers tense around him. After 12 hours of invisible enemies and psychological warfare, seeing their opponent face to face was somehow more unsettling than reassuring. "Terms?" Drex managed. "Your mission has failed," Reed stated matter-of-factly. "The civilian researchers are safe. Your force has been neutralized as a military threat. You have 2 choices." The human's calm certainty was more intimidating than any threat could have been. This was not boasting or intimidation. It was simply a professional assessment of the tactical situation. "Continue this engagement and lose the rest of your soldiers," Reed continued. "Or withdraw immediately and preserve what remains of your unit." "You are 6 soldiers against 14, Drex said, trying to inject some authority into his voice. Reed nodded. 6 human special operations soldiers against 14 demoralized mercenaries with compromised equipment, no secure communications, and no tactical mobility. He paused. "The math is not in your favor." Lieutenant Mora whispered urgently. In Drex's ear, "Commander, we should consider this. We have already lost more soldiers in 12 hours than in our last 5 contracts combined." Drex looked around at his remaining troops. They were exhausted, frightened, and completely out of their depth. These were veterans who had fought across the galaxy, but they had never faced anything like human special forces. "What guarantee do we have that you will let us leave?" Drex asked. "None," Reed replied honestly. "But you have my word as a professional soldier that if you withdraw immediately, my team will not pursue. Your contract is with the Villani Corporation, not with Earth. This conflict does not serve either of our interests." The simple honesty of the statement was somehow more convincing than any elaborate promise would have been. "And if we refuse?" Drex had to ask. Reed's expression did not change. "Then we continue the engagement until one side is no longer capable of fighting. Based on current trends, that will be your side within the next few hours." Drex closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his career. In 20 years of mercenary work, he had never withdrawn from a contracted mission. But in 20 years of mercenary work, he had never faced Deathworld Special Forces. "All units," he said into his comm, "prepare for immediate withdrawal to the landing zone." Relief was visible on every alien face around him. Professional pride was one thing, but survival was another. As the mercenaries began their retreat, Reed stood perfectly still, watching them go. Just before they disappeared into the jungle, he called out one final time. "Commander Drex, a word of advice." Drex turned back. "The next time someone offers you a contract against human targets, ask yourself why the payment is so high." 3 hours later, the Crimson Talon Syndicate ships jumped out of the Kepler 442b system. In the cargo bay, 14 survivors sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had happened to them. "What do we tell the Guild?" asked Mora. Drex considered the question. "How do you explain that 6 humans had destroyed a 40-soldier mercenary company? How do you describe enemies who could turn any piece of equipment into a weapon? Who could move through impossible terrain? Who could fight with wounds that should have been fatal?" "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "We tell them that human special forces are not like other military units in the galaxy. We tell them that humans come from a world where everything tries to kill them, and it shows." Within a week, the story had spread through every mercenary bar and military academy in known space. The recordings recovered from mercenary equipment became required viewing for tactical students. And somewhere in those recordings, in the footage of humans performing impossible feats of endurance and adaptability, the galaxy began to understand why Earth's defenders had earned their terrifying reputation. The Crimson Talon Syndicate quietly dissolved within the month. Commander Drex never took another contract against human targets, and on Kepler 442b, 12 researchers returned safely to their work, protected by the knowledge that when humanity's children were threatened, Earth's special forces would always be watching.